Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. Be sure to follow us, by the way, at Twitter, twitter.com/UNC Knowledge. Of Persian descent, Fouad Ajami was raised in Lebanon, coming to the United States at the age of 18. A senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, Dr. Ajami is professor of Middle East Studies at Johns Hopkins University. His most recent book is entitled The Foreigner's Gift, The Americans, the Arabs, and the Iraqis in Iraq. Fouad Ajami, welcome.
Thank you very much, Peter, for having me.
Segment 1, Iraq. Have we won? Vice President Joseph Biden this past February, quote, hold on to your chair for this one. I am very optimistic about Iraq. I mean, this could be one of the great achievements of this, Barack Obama's, of this administration, close quote. So, what do you make of that?
Luckily, there are no paternity tests to be given to the Biden claim that he is that this is a victory for the Obama administration. I actually knew Vice President Biden, then Senator Biden. I haven't seen him since his rise
since his elevation.
Exactly. We used to take the Acela Express, the metro liner. I came from New York. He came from Wilmington. I've known then Senator Biden, and his position was remarkable. He basically said there is no Iraq. He said there were three countries in Iraq. There was Shi'istan for the Shia,
right.
Sunnistan, and Kurdistan. This was the general proposition.
That was Peter Galbraith is the one who made that thesis, that we should just break it up into three separate countries.
Yes, Peter Galbraith, who wrote a book called The End of Iraq, that Iraq was over. Luckily, the fact that we'll take Vice President Biden joining us in the Iraq caravan. I think the Iraq project has worked out well. I know Iraq very well. I spent 5-6 years coming in and out of Iraq. I know the Iraqi politicians to a man. I know the American commanders. I know the American soldiers. We can be proud of what we've done in Iraq. We have midwife. America has midwife, a binational state that means Arab and Kurd, and has midwife, a democratic entity in the heart of the Middle East.
Two quotations, Fouad. The first, President George W. Bush, February 2003, quote, a new regime in Iraq would serve as a dramatic and inspiring example of freedom for other nations in the region, close quote. The second is you, Fouad Ajami, March of 2010, this very spring. Quote, peace has not settled upon Baghdad, but this new Iraq, even in its current condition, is a rebuke to the dynasties and the dictatorships of the Arab world, close quote. Now, what interests me there is that Bush said a new Iraq could be an inspiring example, which would suggest that the surrounding Arab nations would want to move toward the new Iraqi model.
Right.
And Fouad Ajami says something a little bit different. It's a rebuke, which suggests that they will simply hunker down in a kind of simmering resentment.
Right. I'm honored you paired me with a man who happens to be a hero of mine, that's President Bush. He was very kind to me. He himself awarded me the National Humanities Medal, so that gives you a tender feeling for the president. I saw him often and talked with him about Iraq often. I think history would be immensely kind to what he did in Iraq. I think the truth is there is a Mexican standoff, if you will, between Iraq and the autocracies of the region. The autocracies of the region tried to destroy this nascent Iraqi democracy. They sent jihadists, they had their media, Al Jazeera television, Al Arabiya television. They had the entire intellectual class in the Arab world against Iraq.
Okay,
but
stop
Iraq
there.
succeeded.
You talked about autocracies plural.
Right.
So you're not talking about just Iran.
No.
Are you suggesting Egypt?
Oh, definitely. I'm suggesting
the Saudis were trying?
Absolutely. There is the threat, if you will, the countries in the region that were menaced by the example of Iraq. It was in part a Sunni Shiaism, we can talk about that.
Right.
But the Jordanians and the Egyptians and the Saudis were hell-bent on making sure that this Iraqi project does not work. Think of the lead terrorist who came to Iraq and sowed death and destruction in Iraq was a man named Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi. American forces killed Zarqawi in the summer of 2006. Zarqawi is from the town of Zarqa in Jordan, east of Amman. The Egyptians, the Saudis, we have documents that 40% of the jihadists who came to Iraq to kill Shia and to kill American soldiers were Saudis. 20 or so percent were Libyans. So by and large,
And your contention is that the House of Saud has enough intelligence in its own. They knew what was going on. They looked the other way.
I mean, they looked the other way because, anyway, the House of Saud didn't like this Iraqi experiment. It was secular, it was democratic, it was Shia, and don't forget, it was going to be a rival in oil production. So there were many, many reasons, economic as well as philosophical, as well as who's going to be America's base, favored base in the region. Is it going to be Saudi Arabia, or will this new Iraq be a competitor for America's attention? So the Saudis knew what was going on.
All right. So now give me your analysis of the current mind of Barack Obama. He ran against the war in Iraq, and now he has his vice president saying, oh, this is one of our great achievements.
Well, I think Barack Obama, remember, his war isn't Iraq. His war is Afghanistan. Because in the discussion leading up, if you will, to the election, Barack Obama made the case that there are stupid wars and smart wars.
Right.
There are wars of necessity and wars of choice. So he claimed the Afghanistan war as his kind of war, that this is the war he would fight. This was the war of necessity, and this was the good war. And he branded Iraq as a war of choice and a bad war. And indeed, in his trip to Cairo for the famous speech he gave on June 4, he maligned Iraq before other Arabs. He maligned the Iraq war. But now he's glad to have it because it is working, it's a success.